Crazy website. One day, a boy was browsing the internet when he came across a crazy website that had a lot of scary stories and urban legends. He wanted to leave a comment on one of the stories, so he joined the website and decided to call himself Devil 666. Almost immediately, he began to receive private messages from anonymous people, saying, "All praise the Dark Lord," and, "We love you, Satan." He was so frightened that he logged off the website and unplugged his internet connection. The next day, a group of Satanists showed up at his house. They forced their way inside, bowed down in front of the boy and started worshipping him. After that, they killed his parents and sat around the house, smoking, drinking, and eating everything in the fridge. When night fell, they put on black robes, lit some black candles and began reciting prayers backwards. The boy grew horns, pointy ears, and a tail and started to smell like sulfur. A teenage girl tried to register on the website as unidentified victim. An hour later, several serial killers showed up at her house and had an argument about who was going to kill her. A fight ensued and the serial killers began hacking and stabbing each other. While they were occupied, the girl took the opportunity to flee, but as she was running across the road, she was mowed down by a car. The police managed to scrape her bloody remains off the street, but because she wasn't carrying a wallet, they didn't know who she was or where she lived. They buried her in an unmarked grave and, for the rest of their lives, her parents wondered where she was. Another young girl who found the website gave herself the nickname Clown Lover 14. Within minutes, a gang of clowns were waiting outside her front door. When she refused to let them in, they started peeking in the mailbox, drooling at the mouth and telling her how cute she was. Her mother called the police and most of the clowns were arrested. However, the next day, when she was on her way to school, a big black van pulled over and blocked her path. She tried to run, but a fat, hairy clown got out and chased after her. He abducted her and, a few days later, her dead body was found by the side of the road. A married man joined the website and, for some reason, he called himself Joanna Cutie. All of a sudden, he started receiving creepy messages from 13-year-old boys who were flirting with him. He needed to go to the toilet, but when he walked into the bathroom and caught sight of himself in the mirror, he was horrified. He had long blonde hair and an ample bosom. He immediately ran into the kitchen to tell his wife. The minute she laid eyes on him, she attacked him and started screaming, "I knew he was cheating on me." He tried to explain, but she slapped his face and pulled his hair. After a while, the two women sat down at the kitchen table, drank a bottle of wine together and cried bitterly about how terrible men were. After that, whenever people joined the website, they thought very carefully before choosing a username. Gravedigger. Years ago, many people feared that they would accidentally be buried alive. Coffins were sometimes built with holes in them, attached to a 6-foot-long copper tube. A bell was hung over the grave and the cord attached to it led down, through the earth, into the coffin. If someone was mistakenly buried without actually being dead, they could breathe through the copper tube and ring the bell to alert the gravedigger that they were still alive. In a certain small town in the United States, the local gravedigger heard a bell ringing one night. He was accustomed to hearing bells ring in his graveyard. Sometimes it was just local children playing a prank. Other times it was just the wind. This time, he was shocked to see that the cord ringing the bell was being pulled from deep underground. The grave digger put his ear to the top of the copper tube and listened. He heard a faint voice from below begging and pleading to be released from the grave. The man looked at the name on the headstone. "Are you Sarah Bannon?" he asked. "Yes," the muffled voice cried. "Were you born on September 17, 1907? asked the grave digger. "Yes," came the answer from deep below. "The headstone says you died on February 20, 1858. "No, I didn't die," cried the voice. "I'm still alive. They made a mistake. Dig me up. I beg you." The grave digger detached the bell from its cord to silence it and plugged up the copper tube with dirt. "Sorry, lady," he said. "This is 1959. Whatever you are down there, you sure as hell ain't alive no more, and you sure as hell ain't comin' up." Soccer. There was a boy in Japan who was born without limbs. All he had in place of arms and legs were little stumps. The boy's parents sent him to a normal school, but none of the other children would play with him. They just bullied him and called him names. The little boy spent all his time on his own and was very sad and lonely. When the other children were playing sports like baseball and soccer, the boy sat on the sideline and watched. His parents were very worried about him and they wondered if he would ever fit in with the other kids. One day, the young boy came home covered in mud. When his mother saw him, she was horrified and asked, "What happened?" "Today, the other kids let me play soccer with them," the boy replied happily. His mother was delighted. "What position did you play?" she asked, smiling from ear to ear. "None," said the boy. "I was the ball." Stain removal. One evening, a woman came home from work and saw a dark red stain on her living room carpet. Suddenly she got a call, "If the stain is not gone by midnight, I will come." And then, suddenly, the line went dead. The woman thought that it was just someone playing a joke on her. She rolled up her sleeves and began rubbing the stain. However, no matter how hard she rubbed, the stain wouldn't go away. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. At 11 o'clock, the phone rang again and the voice on the other end of the line said, "If the stain is not gone by midnight, I will come." And then, the line went dead again. Startled, the woman kept working on the stain, but nothing she tried would get it out of the carpet. 5 minutes before midnight, the phone rang again and the voice said, "If the stain is not gone by midnight, I will come." And then, the line went dead yet again. The woman was frantic. She couldn't get rid of the stain. On the stroke of midnight, there was a knock at the door. When she answered it, there were 2 men dressed in black standing outside. They were holding a long black coffin between them. The coffin lid slowly opened and a man with a bald head and a white t-shirt stepped out and said, "Then give it a go with Mr. Clean." "Girlfriend problems. Back when I was in high school, I wasn't the best looking guy. I guess I'd probably rate myself a 6'10". My parents had just moved house, so I didn't have any friends and I was quite lonely. One warm summer's day, I was mowing the lawn when a little dog happened to come running into our garden. It disappeared behind our house. I looked up to see a beautiful girl walking down the road, obviously chasing it. She was a 9'10". After I helped her find her dog, I introduced myself and we started talking. We had a lot in common, so I got her number. We eventually went out on a date and fell in love. A few months later, a new girl moved in, just down the street from me. She wasn't bad looking. Maybe a 7'10". Being a friendly guy, I decided to be polite and introduce myself. We became friends, but she always seemed a bit strange to me. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was, but there was definitely something odd about her. One day, she asked me out on a date. I politely declined and tried to let her down easy. I explained to her that it didn't make sense for me to go out with a 7'10" when I was already dating a 9'10". That didn't seem to go down very well with her. When she found out that I had a girlfriend, I could see she was extremely jealous. As the weeks went by, I began to notice that I was seeing my girlfriend less and less, while I had been seeing the other girl more and more. Whenever we were together, my girlfriend always seemed worried, as if she had a lot on her mind. I didn't think much of it at the time, but in retrospect, I wish I did because I quickly came to regret it. About 4 days later, I got a message from my girlfriend on Facebook saying that someone had sent her an anonymous message threatening to kill her if she ever talked to me again. I couldn't believe what I was reading. That's when it dawned on me that the other girl was a complete psycho and was stalking my girlfriend. For the next couple of days, I couldn't sleep a wink. I was really freaked out and didn't know what to do about the situation. I was afraid to call my girlfriend in case it made matters worse. I was afraid to call the other girl in case it made her do something crazy. By the weekend, I still hadn't heard anything from my girlfriend and I was really getting worried for her safety. I tried calling her, but the phone just rang and nobody picked up. Just then, there was a knock on the front door. I answered it and saw 2 men in police uniforms standing there on the doorstep. They had grave expressions on their faces and asked if they could come inside. We went into the living room and sat down. They showed me pictures of the 2 girls and asked me if I knew them. Yes, I said. There was a queasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew something was extremely wrong. The policeman told me that my girlfriend had disappeared a few days ago. The 7'10" girl had been found dead that morning. She had committed suicide. During the autopsy, they found human remains inside her stomach. When they did a DNA test, they confirmed that it was the remains of my girlfriend. "Do you have any idea what happened?" they asked. I leaned forward in my chair and said, "I guess the best way to explain it is that 6 was afraid of 7 because 7 ate 9. Scary hand. One night, a little girl's parents went out and left her home alone. She turned off the lights and went to bed, but she couldn't fall asleep. When the clock struck midnight, the girl suddenly heard a noise at her bedroom window. As she watched in horror, a big hairy hand reached through the window and she heard a deep voice growling, "Give me bread." The little girl was very frightened. She ran to the kitchen and grabbed a loaf of bread. She ran back to her bedroom, gave the bread to the hairy hand, and it vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. The girl stayed up all night, sitting in the corner and trembling with fear. She was afraid to go to sleep in case the hairy hand appeared again. In the morning, when her parents came home, she told them what she had seen, but they didn't believe her. The girl insisted that it was not a dream. That night, the little girl was afraid to sleep alone. To calm her down, her mother decided to sleep in the bed with her and keep her company. The clock struck midnight and again a black hairy hand appeared in the window. They heard the same eerie voice growling, "Give me bread." The girl and her mother were very scared and they quickly gave the hairy hand a loaf of bread. The hand disappeared and the little girl and her mother hugged each other tight and stayed trembling under a blanket until the morning. They told the father what they had seen and he immediately called the police. That night, 3 policemen arrived, armed with guns. They went upstairs and hid under the girl's bed. The policemen warned the family that, under no circumstances were they to give the black hairy hand any bread. Once again, the clock struck midnight and once again, the black hairy hand reached through the window and a deep voice growled, "Give me bread." No one moved. The voice roared even louder, "Give me bread." There was an uneasy silence. The voice howled even louder, "Give me bread." The police quietly crawled out from under the bed and aimed their guns at the window while the little girl and her family cowered in the corner, trembling with fear. Just then, a hairy black monkey poked his head through the window and looked around. "What happened?" he asked innocently. "Did you run out of bread?" Skeleton in the closet. A very large, old building was being torn down to make room for a new skyscraper. Due to its proximity to other buildings, it could not be imploded and had to be dismantled floor by floor. While working on the 49th floor, 2 construction workers found a human skeleton in a small closet behind the elevator shaft. They decided that they should call the police. When the police arrived, the workers led them to the closet and showed them the skeleton. It was fully clothed, covered in cobwebs and dust and sitting in a crouched position. They all found the sight of the skeleton disturbing and wondered who it could have been and how they wound up in the closet. The police forensics team removed the body and demolition of the building was put on hold until the police figured out the identity of the corpse. 2 days went by and the construction workers were becoming impatient. They couldn't stand it anymore. They had to know who they had found. They called the police and said, "We are the 2 guys who found the skeleton in the closet and we want to know who it was." The policeman said, "It's somebody kind of important." "Well, who was it?" they asked. The policeman replied, "The 1956 national hide-and-seek champion."